And we're back on the Print Your Game, the podcast for the miniature 3D printing enthusiasts, the people who love the machine that gives us all the minis we could ever want and could never paint. I'm one of your hosts, Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Perram, and I'm joined by
Kristen Sowards, also known as Lost Spheres.
Awesome. And if you have any questions for us during the episode, either over on YouTube or Facebook, please toss it into the chat or comments and we will answer your questions, because this time we're talking about meat space. We're talking about conventions. We're talking about getting back together and actually seeing the fruits of these 3D printed labors. I have finally gone to a convention, Kristen.
Outside
with people and badges and lines, so many lines to wait through. Actually, I got to skip most of them because I had a media badge, and the media badge is glorious sometimes.
Someday I aspire to have such a thing.
Yeah, keep this up, and someday you might be wearing a Print Your Games media badge.
Fair enough. Wow, that's great. I'm super excited to hear about what Outside has to offer. I think I've been to one convention in the last 2 years, so I am sorely missing this kind of news.
I know. I really was super withdrawn on it because conventions is kind of like how I energize, how I recharge my gaming battery, how I get the motivation to go do crazy things like build props and leather bound campaign journals and 3D print everything under the sun. It is simply one of the just seeing so many people excited about this hobby of ours and what is possible just gives me more and more reason to try to consistently up my game and give my players and the people I play with in games a better and better experience. And the 3D printer is a tool towards that goal, because like you've done this, like you can make all sorts of encounters and terrain, and if we get Maxim's crazy transforming books and props and stuff, can really up the game. And I was hoping when I went down to PAX Unplugged that I would see a lot of that there, and see, like, I expected that 3D printing would have come in like a force and completely changed the landscape of the convention, and I was mostly wrong.
Aww.
Yeah,
I'm still eager to see where you see it did touch, though. I'm sure it was there.
Yeah. So there was definitely a lot of 3D printing on the ground there at PAX, but I didn't there wasn't like a whole bunch of 3D printed booths or support our Patreon Broken Anvil next month. We have the bestest, awesomeness, everything. Though there was a little bit of that. First and most prominently, Titanforged was there, which was a pleasant surprise to see one of my favorite 3D mini companies actually in person, and they were showing off Bloodfields, which was their Kickstarter game, their miniature skirmish game. And
2 Kickstarters actually for Bloodfields.
This is true. The first one was digi only, and the second one was to make it physical. And then when I got there, I got to see the physical version of it, and also got to play it for the first time when I asked them, "Hey, run a demo game. I'd like to play this game I pledged on a long time ago that I have." And
right.
I really just got for the minis, and it's a surprisingly fun game. It actually is really cool. I've been doing a whole lot of skirmish and fantasy and wargaming lately, and Bloodfields is very well designed. It's fun. It has just the right amount of meta and complexity without going into the absolute craziness. And I had a blast playing the game of it. In fact, I'm going to pull up a picture of the
while you're pulling that up, can I ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
So it is a skirmish game, right?
It is a skirmish game.
And is it Titanforged specific rules to minis is what I was wondering.
They have every mini it is this specific mini has this specific stat card with their picture on it, and not every Titanforged mini has a picture, or sorry, has the Bloodfields rules available for it.
Right.
But every monthly release, they do a significant number of them are converted over to Bloodfields, and cards are available to play.
Did you see if it had any rules for modeling out like new stuff, or is it all just here's the card, here's the thing?
I did not see any of that. I am sorry.
It's okay. We're both patrons. We could probably dig into that from the patron side later.
So I was just mostly focused on learning to play this game, and and it's really cool because you have a force. The demo they were showing, I had 4 people. They had 4 people. I got to give inspiration tokens between each round, which basically lets them mulligan dice and make things a little bit better, a little bit worse, a little bit more killy, or a little bit more survivable. It basically allows you to change failures into successes on the dice rolls.
And that's kind of like a fate system over the mini's own rules.
Yeah, and each mini has special abilities on the cards that you're able to pull off, ranged attacks, passive abilities. It felt really what it reminded me most was playing the old Dungeons and Dragons battle game with those cards and those minis. The miniature collector game, with a little bit of like traditional war skirmish game on top, because we are measuring in inches. This isn't played on a grid. There is terrain and goals and that sort of thing. We were just doing a hold the objective kind of demo map here, and it was a blast. I liked it a lot. It was fun to see physical versions of minis that I have printed off myself. The cast versions, you don't have the layer lines as visible. Like if you zoom in with a microscope, but you turn the mini just right that you've 3D printed, you can kind of see the layer lines until you slap a coat of paint over it, at least.
Yep.
And you don't see that with these, though, because they are cast. You do have things like mold lines and little sprue bits and stuff that I'm like, wait, that doesn't belong there. That doesn't belong in this mini at all.
This mini is flawless. How did this get here?
Yeah. And they were really nice. They recognized me when I showed up because they've seen me post some of the stuff, and so they gave me one of the 2-player starter sets to open up and show off, and I'll show off in the video a little bit later when I eventually get my bag unpacked, because that stuff is still sitting in the closet, as I did just get back on Monday from the trip. But they have a 2-player starter set that they were selling, and I'm coming back to that. And like individual starter sets for the different factions are available. And the other thing they had was they were showing off the Titans of Adventure. If you remember the Titans of Adventure that you get every month with them, with like 3 new heroes.
Right.
They were packaging those up 3 for $12 for resin cast versions of them that were like really slick. And then they had a whole bunch of painted examples up in the case. And I felt so inadequate seeing these. I was like, oh, I thought I was getting better at painting. I'm never going to be this good.
Yeah. I think I have some limitations of my ability to focus for that long, but you'd still do just fine, sir.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun to like see them, shake their hands. Hopefully I'll be able to bring them in and do an interview with some people from Titanforged. They did seem eager for that, so hey,
that'll be really cool.
Forward to that in the future episode. But that was definitely like the most traditional of mini companies. There was one more there, but I didn't get to stop because it was Arcane Minis were there. You mentioned them were there, and I should keep a lookout for them, and then I didn't. So I did stop by their booth for a brief moment.
Yeah, I've been a big backer of both their Patreon and of both of their Kickstarters for Skies of Sordain. They have a lot of different product presences. I believe they were there showing off their new board game, Airship board game battles game for Lara Reborn.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of different stuff they're making. Really cool. I was there that's why I wanted an FDM printer for so long, because I have this massive set of airships that are like 3 feet long and playable interiors. It's crazy. So much plastics. What is it? It's not sprue. It's what's the filament is going to be going through. If the big box that I have seen lurking under the Christmas trees, what do you think it is?
One of these days, I want to print one of those. I don't know how much I need multiple gigantic airships, but I mean, I've always been a fan of their stuff, but I just don't do a lot of the steampunky airshipy stuff in my games. Though I do kind of want one of them. But what they had there was indeed the new board game, and I was looking at it, and like the second I saw their figures on the table, I was like, "That's a 3D printed mini." And I picked it up and looked at it. I was like, "Yep, this is absolutely. I can see layer lines, and I recognize Elegoo mint green anywhere." So it was.
Yeah, Carrie McLeod Gearing in chat says she needs an airship. I need at least 2, Carrie, because I've got to have them fight like crew to crew, going back and forth, trying to scuttle each other's ships would be really badass. I think it'd be fun.
That would be a fun game to set up for a convention too, because like I always like to bring my A game to the convention in like the cool looking terrain and if you brought 2 giant airships to have a one shot airship battle game, yeah, you get a lot of people taking pictures of that. It
Oh, it
definitely
will
would
happen.
impress, but you're looking at like weeks of 3D printing on a filament printer to put those ships are huge
They're
when they're full
massive.
size at 28 millimeter. These are not. These are
They're
tiny
not.
little ships. These are and they look nice. I got the picture up right now for those watching the video version of the painted ships, and those did catch my eye, and I can definitely see the appeal of that for sure. Um,
Well, and
Ironically, it would be like bringing the starship combat back into Pathfinder to do the airship combat.
we actually did some of that in City of Seven Stars, and I think there's a couple other ones. Starjammer did it too,
Mhm.
and I think even in Ultimate Combat for Pathfinder, and I think there's been some stuff, a couple third-party D&D 5e things, and I think these would be great figs for that, right? Like just to pop them in there and have your little skirmish sky map.
Mhm.
I think that would be really fun.
Right. And you have been following them. So you mentioned that they're going to have, when this board game comes out, there's going to be a version of it purchasable for 3D printing gamers so that
So
they
yeah,
can print the minis.
there is. It's kind of unclear, but their
Mhm.
Patreon definitely has a kind of a plane shift is the thing I think coming out, which is going to be kind of a cross-planar airship campaign expansion, and it's going to have rules for tactical. And I think these figs will start being available for that. It's I don't know how many we're going to get a month, but it's going to be part of the Patreon
Okay.
download. I know that there was a pledge level for including them, I think, in their last Kickstarter, but
Yeah. And I think that that's more and more viable, especially in a world right now where we're dealing with shipping crises. Being able to like say, hey, we're going to make a version of this game, but if you have a 3D printer and here is just the stuff that would be super inconvenient to print yourself in high quality, and then here print all these minis and these board tiles, and then boom, you've got a game at a significant cost cut, that you, because you were able to make it yourself or a good chunk of it yourself. And that's kind of what I did with the when I just after I played Bloodfields, I'm like, I need to play this more at home. I can print all of Bloodfields. I have all of Bloodfields.
100%. Yep.
Yeah,
I
I
have
could do
everything for it.
that. I don't want to print those dice. So I bought a pack of the dice because like I could print the dice and then paint the dice, and that's a hassle for dice, and dice roll around and get chipped. I
Mm-hmm.
could print the dice and then make silicone molds of them and cast them in resin and do all this cool stuff. Or I could just give them $20 for a big box full of the dice pre-made. Like that's a good example of it wasn't worth it for me to do the actual 3D printed version of that. Now all the minis and the terrain and that stuff, gonna print that for sure. Those cool objective markers, gonna print that for sure. But I
Right.
don't want to, but getting dice dimensionally accurate and cool and durable and with translucent resin with cool glitter stuff inside of it. That sounds like something you would do, wouldn't it?
It is something I probably do, but I will say this is definitely what I call by the butter. There was a cookbook in my previous life. We sold
Mhm.
cookbooks, and one of them is called "Make the Bread by the Butter," and it's like
Okay.
it was recipes based on what actually gave you the best result. And I think dice is a great example of a by the butter. You just
Mhm.
you get that you don't make the butter yourself, right?
Mhm.
That's a tiny thing. It's going to be high impact, like you said. Those are going to chip. They're going to break. I mean, we've all seen how resin behaves on an impact from a decent height. So, those of us who haven't been able to get the cool additive at least yet, I'm probably going to start doing it because I had I tripped and dropped a whole tray of Alkin the other day, and it was
Ah!
so sad.
You
So
need to
sad.
start putting tenacious in your minis. Ever since then, like I've been throwing these at the ground and they live.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. My sad, tragic Alkin
Oh no.
massacre, which we'll talk about more in the
Is it the
projects
ones
bit.
that you
But
sent me the pictures of that were all zenithal up and everything?
yeah, that was
Oh
I
no,
was.
I have to pull them up just to pay homage to the tiny poor Alkin.
It's not a good picture though. Don't do it. All
Well, I
right.
mean, like we're never going to get to see them again
Oh, we'll
because
see
they
them.
got
We'll see them.
okay. But now I have to because I mentioned it
Okay.
on the podcast.
Because we've mentioned their sad,
Oh,
tragic end.
When you told me you were printing Alkin, I was expecting like the Furwood owl, like the super cute one with the sword. That he was there. He was there at the convention. They had 3D printed that for their booth, like 2 foot tall.
Nice. There are definitely some really cute ones out there, and with Strixhaven coming out, I've been looking for them. I will say this though, if there's any 3D sculptors listening, I have wings and arms Alkin that are in that book don't exist as far as I can tell. So, but these were from Clay Cyanide, and really, really liked them. I kind of pulled a couple. There's people that might be involved in using them, and they were like, "Those are so badass looking."
Yeah, well, you said, like I said, I mentioned it when you showed me these the first time. I was like, I expected cute little chibi owls, and what you got were like hunky, beefy owls. Like these are owls that I would swoon at a leather bar or something. Like these owls would break somebody in two. Orcs are afraid of these owls.
These owls, absolutely, yeah. The barbarian types have some serious owlbear energy going on, I think.
And you got Ninja Owl just hanging out there in the middle too.
Yeah. Well, James has to have his rogues and ninjas. That's his wheelhouse. So I had to find one.
Right. Also in chat, Bastille. Hello, Bastille. Thanks for joining us. If you have any questions for us about 3D printing miniatures packs, get them in. We would love to answer live questions throughout the podcast.
Absolutely.
Oh, so you dropped a tray of minis, and that's the one advantage of the new like soft rubber minis that have like the bones and the deep cuts and stuff, the stuff that you don't resin print. They don't break. In fact, we used to make a joke with the PVC minis, the old D&D ones, that you could run a truck over these and they'd be fine. So then we took a wood elf and we put it outside and ran over it in an F-150 and it was fine.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I had to unbend the base, but it didn't break.
Yeah, I had that really cool nightmare from that Pathfinder set, and it got wedged in a box, and I didn't notice it, and it was all bent. And I did the hot water trick, and it did come back together. It was fine.
Now, I've got is this one of your owls? This is one of the images that you sent me was of this
Clay Cyanide ones.
From the I think so. This is Clay Cyanide Shutaka. Like this owl paladin.
Yeah, so that one of the reasons why I wanted to show this one is they don't say Alkin on them at all. So you actually have to look for the factions release for, I think it's Brotherhood of Bernek. And they're all kind of in that series. And there's a good variety. There's a couple casters. There's a male and a female caster type, a couple warriors. Really, really good. I was kind of disappointed. There was another Alkin set. I'm not going to rack my brain to remember the Patreon because all the females in that one were like barmaids and like not even clerics, or like not even like stereotyped bad. It was. Then I found another set that had some really cool like multi-gender like paladins and warriors, and then this one had some decent casters and stuff for both. So
nice.
It was kind of hard because I do have a lot of girls in my gaming group, so I just wanted to make sure there was good options. So
yeah. Did you get the Titanforged Beast set they had with this freaking awesome tree dude was the centerpiece of that set?
I'm pretty sure I did. I think I've only missed a couple months of Titanforge.
They have some awesome owl casters in that set, which is the reason I bring it up.
Maybe I missed it. I don't know. I'll have to double check. The other one I was looking at was, I don't remember off the top of my head. No need to dig into my owls, especially if I'm going to talk about it again later. Maybe we won't talk about it much.
So that was so those were the two like 3D printed centric booths that I saw while I was down there. But another thing I did see a lot of was prototypes, and then just looking at them, that's a 3D print. That's a 3D print. That's a 3D print. So, and especially when I went to the playtest hall, which makes sense. Absolutely. Like if you're going to prototype a game yourself, a board game, and you're going to get custom made components for it, you're going to 3D print the first set that you're going to show off at the convention. And so like when I was playtesting like weird digging archaeology game with shovels and picks and custom cards and stuff. Yeah, there was 3D printed components there. When it was weird dragons, it was 3D printed components there. And basically, where I'm seeing the most influence of 3D printing at the convention, it was like demo first draft components that people were showing off, and that it makes perfect sense because this is still an enthusiast level hobby at the moment, and the people that would be most interested would be people making games and wanting to be able to very quickly iterate on ideas like that.
Yeah. I did see when I was at Gamehole earlier this year, there was a booth of someone, and I'm bringing this up because listeners might even want to get into this. A merchant who had the merchant licenses from a bunch of different Patreons who was printing small sets of resin ones and just kind of packing them up and had them in like little clear, safe packaging, and would just sell them. And they were not cheap, but they were comparable to, like your high end, like Confrontation or whatever, And I think we'll probably start seeing that more and more, especially because some of these secondary vendors are getting pretty big.
Right.
And that's something I think it'll be interesting to watch. And I would encourage listeners, if you're looking for 3D printed stuff that you want, but you haven't been able to get into it yet yourself, you might be able to find a booth at a con.
Right.
Look for lots of gray. That's what I would say. And you'll probably find that there's a vendor that's going to have a whole bunch of pre-printed 3D resin stuff. And some of it could be some of the stuff you've been looking for. So,
yeah. And honestly, the best place that I have found to get 3D printed stuff that I didn't print myself is Etsy. Etsy is like the king for finding 3D printed stuff, because sometimes I just don't want to bother with it. There was I've bought plenty of things when I was like, I could give them $20 for these 10 Vampire Knights, or I could print them myself, or I could just go print something else myself. And in 2 days, I'll have these awesome 10 Vampire Knights. Right. And printing horses is a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I don't know. I see horse and I see fireball fodder in most of my games. So most of my players have been dissuaded, unless it's a class feature that they can actually keep like getting lots of hit points. They usually are like, no, I'm not gonna have a mount.
Yeah. War Chest Creations is also a great place, a great market vendor. They don't have a whole big collection, but the stuff I have gotten from them has been high quality, and they use like the toughed up resin stuff so that like the minis do not break. And that's like, that was what gave me the idea to start mixing in Tenacious with my stuff. Was I got, if you remember, Cast and Play did this like Minotaur set where they had like this humongous centerpiece Minotaur, and I was like, I could print that. It would be $15 worth of resin, and my printer's kind of needing some work right now, so I'm pretty sure I would fail it twice before I get one off the plate successfully.
Yikes.
And so I was like, I'm going to give you $15, and you're going to send me this thing. And then I got it, and it was like, this thing is bendy, and I can hit it over the coffee table, and it's fine. What did you use? Oh, I'm now going to start doing that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take the splurge at least on a couple of projects, I think, especially anything I want to take to a convention.
Right. And this is also, even if you are a 3D printer, odds are that when you get started, you have a resin printer but not an FDM printer, or the reverse. You have an FDM printer but not a resin printer. Before I got my FDM printer, I was on Etsy all the time buying 3D printed terrains. Like I bought a set of 3D printed tree armatures with like cool creepy faces in the front of them that was really cool. And that's how I got most of my forest done, because like, yeah, now I would just print it myself on my Neptune too, but at the time I just had an Elegoo Mars, not even my Saturn yet, and it was just cheaper and easier to just have somebody else do that for me. So even if you do have a printer, sometimes you be lazy. Sometimes just give somebody money, get model, and it works.
Yeah, and if you're willing to split the difference, there's a lot of maker spaces opening up too, where you can just get the file and then take it into a maker space that has somebody who will help you get through and get it out, and still at a pretty affordable price. Carrie just mentioned, do you need to worry about licensing on Etsy? Most Patreons at least have a merchant agreement that they do, and once you're licensed, as long as you're currently holding that tier, you're good to go and print them and sell them as much as you want. So
Right. It's usually pretty easy to spot a legit merchant over there because they'll show up, like they'll show the license agreements. They'll have the logos on it. The ones that are avoiding it, they like scrub the Artisan Guild logo off the images they're using for promos, and yeah, it's I hate it. I hate that there are people skirting that line, but if it usually on Etsy, it's not too bad, especially since Etsy will respond to takedown notices from the artists themselves.
Right. Sorry, I was going to mention something else about the license. Oh, another thing you can do if you're really into a Patreon or artist is oftentimes their Discords will have a merchant channel or whatever. You can just at them and say, hey, I'm looking for a print from this, and you can get definitely like licensed merchants who are in good relationships with the artists, because they're actually talking to them on Discord like on the daily. So
and more importantly, ask for merchant printers that are in your region, so that hopefully in your country. So like in the US, we're a little bit spoiled. There's so much over here to get printed, and it's in shipping. Even international shipping isn't so bad for us in getting it into the country. Getting it out can be a beast. But I do know like fans from Europe have complained about like how stupidly expensive it is to just get something shipped even a couple of countries over sometimes, much less imported from overseas. And for our Australian and New Zealand listeners, I hear and understand that is a difficult journey sometimes to get stuff imported and shipping. That can be a beast. So do look for 3D printing merchants in my area, because that will vastly decrease the shipping cost. And if you have tariffs that you have to worry about, if buying from somebody in your country, don't have to pay a tariff.
Yeah, and here I'm feeling my privilege. I think I know 2 vendors that are in Denver, so like even like it would be here in a day or two. So as soon as I got off the plate.
You know where else I saw a lot of 3D printing?
Where's that?
Booth decorations. Even if stuff wasn't for sale, a lot of booths wanted to flex. And I think I saw 4 different copies of that Artisan Guild Tarrasque just blown up huge and showed off. There was one booth that was, I don't know whose dragons they were, but they had like a bunch of those dragon heads mounted onto walls that they had decorating behind their booth. And that was like, that's a project I might want to consider someday.
There is, I can't remember the name. There's a Patreon, and they did a Kickstarter, and it's all just dragon busts. That's the whole thing. I'm trying to remember. If I can.
Yeah, because every day I'll go and look at my friendly local game store, they have one of those red dragons from WizKids, and I'm like, I want that. I don't want that $700 worth. No.
Yeah, the local one here over at Game Haven has like the whole thing. The Illithid, the Beholder. Oh, wow. There's I think an Owlbear one now.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
This is making me want to get a larger format FDM printer even, and seeing.
I might
even on my Neptune, it's just like, it's a foot square, but that's even a little bit much.
I'm just gonna say that box looks awfully big. That's what I'm gonna say. So I might have a very big one. Surely we'll see.
I'll tell you the one I do want to do, and that because I saw somebody do it. Somebody sized up 1,000% the Artisan Guild Beholder and printed it like the size of a beach ball, and that was, I want that in my game room for certain.
That's cool.
Yeah, and there was so much of that down there, like big old, like I mentioned the little cute owls over. Those were blown up to like statue size and available everywhere. I mean, this was an expensive endeavor to get. Like, you either had to hire a custom artist to come in and make one of these for you, or you had to hire a company to do these big statues. And like pretty much only the Games Workshops and the Wizards of the Coasts and the TSRs could afford to have like big old giant statues of their characters. And that was, that's a flex. That's a big flex you do at a convention like this.
Right.
But now it's, with 3D printing available, enough patience and some money, but nowhere near the same amount of money.
Yeah,
you can have your custom character 2 foot tall in the glass display case.
I found the Kickstarter. I was thinking of Thunder of Dragons. That's what it's called.
Nice.
And I think they also are doing some other stuff like that you can get continuous, but there's a ton of busts in that one. I sent you a link.
Awesome. I'll have to figure out how to open that link.
Yes, we are experimenting with new stuff.
Yeah, we're using Restream Live Studio for the first time, and so far it's working nicely.
Actually, I'm really enjoying being able to see the chat, which I couldn't in my old setup, so that's really cool.
Yeah. So more chat. So that was that. Some other booths that were there. Games Workshop was there. I didn't ask them about 3D printing at all because I figured that would be kind of a jerk move.
Poking the bear.
Yeah. Also, I felt bad because there wasn't a ton of people at their booth either. So that, but they did do something awesome. They sponsored the paint and take. So usually, like Reaper,
yeah.
So usually that's thing.
Reaper, maybe Privateer, but yeah, it's cool.
So I was like, hey, I've got some time to kill, and it's been a long time since I've used Citadel layer paints, and I've long since moved on to Vallejo and Pro Acryl and Reaper and just about every other brand of painting going. And if you're going to print minis, you need to paint minis because the home hobbyist does not yet have the Hero Forge color printing technology available to us yet. One of these days we will, and that will be a wonderful, glorious day. But until then, we still have to paint these ourselves. And so they had that booth there. So I decided, hey, I'll sit down and give it a shot and try Citadel paints again and get a feel for them. And I had a great time.
Stormcast, right?
Yeah, I got one of these Stormcast Vindicators. I might have the name of it wrong. So my sister plays Stormcast as ogres in Kings of War, and also uses them as the Paladin ogres in Kings of War for the Basileia faction, which has Paladin ogres, which are awesome.
Very cool.
And this is her color scheme. So I was like, let's see how I can do with these Citadel paints. And I just sat down there. The paint and take is where I like to chill and relax during a convention and just kind of like de-stress. And I gave it my all on this, and I was pretty happy with the result. I did not have my magnifiers with me, so it was a little bit sloppy on that shield design, getting those layers right.
I think you're okay, especially for a paint ticket at con, man.
Yeah,
that's pretty nice looking for a couple hours at a table.
Yeah, and but hey, I have to admit I enjoyed using the Citadel paints, and I kind of swore them off when I switched to Vallejo and dropper bottles and stuff. But lead belcher's a great paint, and it goes on nice, and McCrag blue goes on smooth, and
yep. And I'm still mostly using them, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because I had so many of them from before. So,
right. And I've got a drawer full of them here from a few years ago that I could probably revivify with a little bit of paint thinner. So might as well. And my local game store stocks them, so why not? The other game store in my area stocks Army Painter, which I like a lot of their product, but I don't like their layer paint. That's where I'm at with them. Their shades. A lot of their technical paints, a lot of their tools are wonderful, but for me, Pro Acryl seems to be my favorite of the layer paint brands that I have. But hey, it was good to get into GW and paint again, and then made just giving them to this younger sibling and seeing them brighten up when I handed them a painted model. That was worth it.
That's very, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm more of a color whore. I go after the specific shades, and so oftentimes I mix brands because I'm always looking for the exact color, because I am still very bad about mixing colors on my own palette, which I need to get over.
Yeah, and I feel bad about it because I always like, just mix your own paints. It's thinking like, wait a minute, no, that's not always easy for everybody. I'm a graphic designer and an artist. My palette usually is like red, green, blue, magenta, cyan, and I just dotted up the front and then just go to town, Diana House style. And
yeah.
But that's not for everybody. But honestly, a lot of that was back when I was a very poor nerd boy who had to scrape together $5 to buy a bottle of Reaper paint, and that was not always easy to do. So I made them stretch as far and as long as I could.
And now I scraped together $8 to buy a contrast paint and then knock it over.
Oh no.
I have, in fact.
This is why you have 3D printed the not spill thingy, right?
I haven't yet.
Oh my gosh. Next episode, Kristen, I want to see that you've 3D printed the I will not spill $8 worth of contrast paint thing.
Because I did have another casualty, and it was the whole bottle this time.
Oh no.
Yeah. I swear that's what Citadel really wants from me is my clumsiness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've loved the contrast line, and I'm really looking forward to the quick shades. The speed paints, Army Painter speed paints. They do look good.
I want them so bad. Every time I see a content creator, love it. Carrie, in response to your question about better paint to use for 3D minis, I would say it's more about your primer and getting a primer that adheres, and then you're good to go with mostly the same stuff.
Yeah. It definitely. Now, I will say that if you're just getting into painting for the first time, look into contrast paints or speed paints, or make your own contrast paints. Watch the Goobertown video and do that. That's what I've got here.
Yes, Goobertown. Brent is very wise.
Indeed. Alex, hello, Alex. Good evening. Learn to Zenithal Prime even with a rattle can. So honestly, if you're going to get into painting 3D minis, get Rust-Oleum 2-in-1 paint and primer. Get a black and a white, and get the white and get them in satin, not flat. Get them flat if you have to, but satin is a little bit better. Do black first, top down Zenithal white, and then go over it with contrast paints, and you will have an amazing looking model with like almost no work at all put into it.
Yeah, and if you want to be a little extra, just a little, I would say like get Vallejo or Army Painter color bases that are going to be your major tone for the model. And Zenithal with that. So you hit it with that base coat and then hit with white. Or if you want to do really weird effects, like sometimes I'll flip that and have the color be the dominant thing. You can get, like if you're doing magic stuff like elementals or fire creatures or whatever, you can do that. And I would say it's worth the extra couple bucks if you're going to do that. Yeah. Alex, I used a lot of Army Painter rattle cans. Like I have an airbrush. I'm learning airbrush. I'm facing my fear about the airbrush, but sometimes it's just, I've got 14 figs. They're all going to be mostly green. Boom. That like I did those Treekin a while back and some Trance, and it was all undercoat brown, overcoat green, kind of almost a face on a little higher. And then I went super high with just a tiny bit of white. And that saved me hours of painting.
At the height of it, I was going to my hardware store and just like literally grabbing every color of primer they had, just so that I would have because that is such a fun way to do it. Especially if you don't use white, like I like a deep navy blue and then topped with lime green as the base coat for my orcs would look really good.
Yeah, that would, and if you're just getting into it, that's going to put you like so high up to start, and you're just going over it with your gear and then just some shading and picking out details. Yeah. It'll look really good.
Do a 2-color Zenithal like that. Throw a black wash or a brown wash over top all of that to kind of do the lining for you, and then just pick out the colors, and 5 minutes of work, and it looks like you spent hours on it.
And then sometimes you mess that up, and it looks just terrible forever.
Yeah, it's just paint. You put a new base color on it. It's great. Also, if these are 3D prints, don't even bother with that.
That's just what I was going to say.
Print a new set.
Use them as your back rank and do another one.
Oh man, like that's the best. One of the best things about 3D printing minis is just print 7 copies of the same mini as practice.
Yeah, Alex, in response to your question about airbrushes, I would say I got a $150 airbrush, which for me was a little bit of an investment, but there's people that would recommend getting a little better than that. You can get them. I even used a hand airbrush for a while that was just with a accelerant can you just put on it, and that worked okay. A lot of it's learning your tool more than anything, because I can get bad results with really great tools. So learn your tool.
Your first airbrush should just be a bundled $20 airbrush that came with your compressor on Amazon or Harbor Freight. Like, you want to get a gravity fed one though. So you want to get a gravity fed airbrush, which is the one with the cup on top, because for mini painting, that's what you want.
100% agree with that.
And you can usually get like a $20 decent airbrush bundled with any given air compressor for airbrushing that's out there. But if you want to get one that's a little bit better than this, I do recommend this one, which is the Iwata Neo. It's about a $60 mid-range airbrush. And after you get used to that 21 that came with your compressor, it's going to be hard to get a compressor without a $20 airbrush included with it. Honestly, harder than.
Yeah, to give clarity, what I said, the $150 one actually had 3 airbrushes with it and a compressor. So like,
wow.
It was.
Oh, I thought it was just the airbrush. I thought you went with a hardening
no. I am not.
or
I
a body
wish.
Eclipse or something.
No. I wish.
Yeah.
Not yet. No, this was for the whole setup. So just to clear that up. But yeah, the gravity fed. By the way, if you're like me and you get super stoked when you're like, oh, that looks so cool, then you have to work on controlling your hand to not throw your airbrush's pot's lid off and just dump your paint out of your whole hand.
Yeah.
So I get very excited when something looks great.
Yeah. So the key when you're learning to airbrush is actually the airbrush doesn't move, you move the model.
Yeah.
And that is how you avoid having a lap full of Abaddon Black, which I've done plenty of times.
It's usually on my knuckles, you know.
It's my knee right here.
Weirdly, I'm finding I airbrush right-handed, which I'm left-handed. And so like, I don't know if that's because the tool is just
it's ambidextrous.
It should be, right? So I don't know why, but I've started doing it and I'm like, hey, I'm doing this right-handed. Why am I doing it right-handed? Maybe it's from all the tutorials I watch. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe I'd have better control with my left. I should try.
I recommend a good video to watch if you're interested in getting in the airbrush is Brent Goobertown. Brent from Goobertown has a video called You Might Need an Airbrush. That is a great exploration of the tool and getting into it and learning it and why you would want to have one and showing off some of the things you can do with it that you just can't do with a physical brush.
Yeah, there's just gradient stuff with dyes and inks that you could just never ever do, and the speed at which you can do them.
Right. Your painting game will level up considerably after you learn to use an airbrush. And here's the other key. When you're learning to use an airbrush, practice on paper. Like, don't practice on models immediately. Just practice on paper, filling in dots, getting how the tool flows. Don't even have to do that long. Just spend 5-10 minutes on the piece of paper getting used to the tool, and then grab your model, and you will be much more happy with it.
See, these things that are on this podcast that would have saved me lots of time and money if I had not dove in. Because I was 100% enthusiasm and like didn't understand that you could still get a really claggy spattering feed on your airbrush if you did it wrong, and like I had to re-prime and actually strip a model or two because I was just like.
I will say that when you do buy an airbrush, one of the things that the next upgrade, or even with the airbrush, is like a cheap. I'm using a Tack Life version of an ultrasonic cleaner, not even a big one, just a small ultrasonic cleaner, just big enough to fit the airbrush into. So the ones that like they show you putting glasses into are the perfect size. That makes cleaning the airbrush so stress-free and easy that I don't even worry about like clogged paint and stuff in it. It's like I do the general maintenance and dumping the paint out and washing water through it. And then when I'm done for the day, throw the whole dang airbrush into the ultrasonic cleaner, run it for 10 minutes. Sometimes I just leave it in there until I'm ready to paint again.
I just usually run water through it till it looks good, but that works probably too. Smarter. How much do those run?
Like $30.
Okay. It's not bad.
Yeah, not bad at all. And also it's useful for stripping paint off minis. Also great.
Yeah. And have you ever tried it with like methylated spirits or something to do
when you resin? Do that, that's the only thing that cleaner can be used for.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because it becomes a contaminated item in your resin kit, which I would not mind getting a one dedicated to cleaning stuff, but wash and cure stations have kind of been perfected at this point with the dedicated versions of these. So the idea of using a ultrasonic cleaner for this seems like more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah, I won that curing station from Puppets War, and that's been life changing. Like, holy crap, it's just so cool just to run it a couple. I usually run it 2 cycles, and now I'm like, I need a washing station. It's got to be at least as good, because right now my ghetto rig of big jars, and and then like my old popcorn bucket is basically what I'm using for cleaning.
Oh no. Oh no. Well, I think that gives a so the next time I go to a convention, first I'll have business cards for print your games that I'll be able to handle out because because of like it's right before Christmas and the shipping stuff, it was like a 3-week turnaround to get business cards from UPS for some reason. All of a sudden, I couldn't even get them in time. And so I'll have that, and I hope to actually bring some 3D printed flex with me. Part of me was like, maybe I want to like design a 3D printable business card and just run those off and hand them out. Like,
yeah, that'd be cool
and stuff. That would be great. If I can, I have lots of ideas that would be great and take lots of time. So no. All right. So let's talk about the news because there's a little bit of 3D train. Darn you, train! It's gone now. There's a little bit of 3D printing news to talk about. And that is normally I don't consider a Kickstarter to be news unless it's a newsworthy Kickstarter. And in this case, I do think it is. And that is that Steve Jackson Games is entering the 3D printing space. Steve Jackson Games is one of the larger and oldest established companies in the games industry. So these are definitely like well-respected establishment. They make GURPS, they make Munchkin, Car Wars, lots of well-beloved games. Ogre, the Fantasy Trip, which is what this Kickstarter is for, the Fantasy Trip is one of the older D&D like early RPGs. So it's a fantasy RPG that was way back in the first edition D&D days when it was available and has been published and continued ever since. So they have some retro 3D printable miniatures available for it that they are pushing with their new Kickstarter. That's cool. I think that now the minis themselves, they got that old school style. They're not really my jam personally, but if that's what you're wanting for, they've got a whole lot of sentient octopus people with various weapons and options. So
I do like sentient octopuses.
Yeah. And lots of like old school style orcs and goblins and hobgoblins and that sort of stuff is available in the kit too. And that's neat. But what is newsworthy here is that it's Steve Jackson Games. It's a major gaming company putting their toe in. So Monty Cook Games, we have Modifius, and now we have Steve Jackson Games.
Peterson Games also on their Cthulhu Wars stuff, and their Cthulhu stuff starting to have that. I bet you the next Cthulhu Wars might even have a digital. I'm betting it'll still be more expensive because they definitely want to move the physical product, I think. But yeah, I think we're going to start seeing that pretty regularly.
Yeah. And I really think that the companies getting into this early are the smarter ones on this case, because these printers are not going to get more expensive and harder to use. They're going to get easier to use and less expensive. And more gaming groups are going to have access to them. And it's such a game changer in the gaming space that it will be disruptive. So have a plan and get involved early, people, if you want to not have this be a destructive force in your business plans going forward.
Right. Well, and like with Peterson Games is my example. I'm waiting on the last two little Cthulhu Wars things they did, and they are years overdue with COVID and everything. It's just been it's been crazy how overdue that is. And I think that's one of the reasons they're just like, it's a reality. If you want to stay relevant and present in the market, why not just push it down to your end user to make it if they want it?
Right. And David Wickham, yeah, that's what I was saying. I was getting so desperate that I thought, well, why don't I just design a 3D business card and print that out? But then I'd have to paint it, and that would get weird.
I noticed earlier in chat someone just typed, Carol typed, I think it's VAS F-Tech, and I don't know what that is. So
no idea. Sorry if you have any, Carol, if you're still with us and want us to know about what that is, give us a little bit more to go on.
Yeah, awesome. I would love to know what it is because it sounds interesting, whatever it is. But
any news that you've got?
Yes, and this is to my knowledge at first, and this is one reason why I wanted to bring it up. Clay Cyanide, because I was looking at those cool Alfkins, has done something with tribes that I don't think anybody else has done yet, which is it is an entirely different stream of minis. It is not their Patreon content. It is a new vendor, a new channel for new figs, and it's a completely different thing. So like and it's also interesting because they did a very they've done, I don't want to say they're grimdark, but you saw those Alcan, they're badass. They're like strong, cool, badass. And then so this release for December suddenly was like Studio Ghibli, like very whimsical.
Ooh, I
and
need
very
to look.
Different. You should, yeah, because I think it might be your thing. But then the same time they did over on their tribes, they've launched a war troll army that is not available on their Patreon. And then they also added turtles to Studio Ghibli thing, or I shouldn't call it that because it's not what it is. It's not licensed, but it's just inspired by kind of lighthearted anime, is what I gather. And then they added,
close as you can get without it being
right. Exactly.
Wow. This is nice though. A lot of Howl's Moving Castle here.
Yeah,
I love
really
this. I
cool
love these
stuff. But it's also interesting because they did it at the same time as they introduced these this other tribes thing that is completely new minis, completely unrelated. And there was enough I don't want to say, I'll say ruffled feathers. It wasn't like super negative, but like, so then they're also releasing a Babylonian mythology one with it too. So you're getting 3. So their Patreon is like crazy loaded with value for December, by the way. So you have a couple weeks to check that out and get like basically 3 full sets of Patreon releases from them. But oddly, then you can get a 4th one on tribes. And I don't know, like I said, I don't think anybody I'm aware of has been doing this. I've seen people do multiple tribes. Like Print Your Monsters has a terrain tribe and a monster tribe, for instance.
There's one other that is doing this, and it confused me, and I was going to talk about that sometime on the podcast, which is Papapskill. I was trying to understand because they have like a traditional futuristic one and like a more cyberpunky one, and the models I was seeing on their tribe was not matching the stuff that was on their Patreon. And the reason that was is like they were doing colonial marines for like alien inspired colonial marines, and I wanted that kit because it would work really great with that Stargrave team I'm trying to put together, to have a few different models that matched kind of the flow I was getting from the ones I was doing. And it wasn't but when I went to the tribe, because like I'll do the tribe this time and try to experiment there because I'm trying to try out both formats. And I'll say I'm liking tribes a little bit better now because it's just directly depositing straight into my library without me having to click buttons.
True, but it's still weird for me, like that tribes is coming in sometimes later than Patreon for me. And it clearly must be somewhere in the interface because it's different tribe to tribe. Because I think 4 tribes right now, and then some Patreons. It's interesting. Like I also have a lot of Patreons that have gone directly just to doing their fulfillment through my mini factory right away. Like, and so it's very different. You kind of like no one's quite doing it the same.
Yeah, it is weird. And then like there's exclusive minis on some and like and not on others. And with the Papapskill, it's 2 different ones entirely. And evidently Clay Cyanide is 2 different ones entirely. I really like these war trolls though.
I do too. Nice. And it's weird for me because now I'm at this situation where until he announced the Babylonian mythology one, which I'm super into, I was looking at it and thinking I'd much rather have these war trolls than the turtles. And you know, like the Ghibli stuff is cool, but it's not something I'm going to use in most of my games, right? Like I could see running maybe a one-shot or something more whimsical, or if I'm running something for kids, my friend Matt, his daughter Anna Freya, you know, we sometimes do a little princess, you know, saves herself adventure for her. But you know, normally speaking, I would much be interested in the war trolls, and so now I'm kind of like, okay, so especially with Clay Cyanide, and one of the reasons why I was kind of wanting to get your feel on it, because they have loyalty. You get accrue loyalty credits off of how many months you stayed involved, and then you get to pick your loyalty incentive, which I think is really cool that they do that. But now I'm like, okay, so if I cancel my Patreon, I'm going to lose those credits for continuous enrollment. but I really want the trolls. And so I'm just like, I don't know how I feel about it. In the best world, I could just buy it all, but I don't know if that's realistic.
In the few cases where it's been like this, where not specifically with the tribes Patreon, I think viewing it as a tribes Patreon split is kind of viewing it down the wrong lens, because ultimately it doesn't matter if it's on tribes or it's on Patreon. It's a subscription service that's available on a platform.
Right.
So the exact platform they choose to use is irrelevant. I just view it as this is a new Patreon from my favorite artist that is separate. It's a separate subscription, and I need to decide whether or not I want this new offering or not. And I had to make that choice several times when Kashinoko decided to do sci-fi tier. And when Orc King decided to do sci-fi tier, I had to decide, do I want to continue to buy their sci-fi offerings? I got on board with Cyberforge for when Titanforged split, but mostly because they gave me a discount and I was able to get both tiers.
Right.
I don't know that I would have made that same choice as early on as I did if it was just another one. So I just look at them on their own merits and decide whether or not I'm going to sub to them, and not worry about, as long as the tribes and subscriptions I do have are delivering what they always said they were, and I don't see a drop in quality or quantity there, then it doesn't bother me. It's just another one to put into the giant hopper of 137 subscription services available as of last month.
Right. I just think it's an interesting choice where, like, and you're now kind of almost competing with yourself, because I think you and I both do this kind of end of month cost valuation, and we're like, okay, do I keep this one going? Like, there is a really a good Patreon I like that I've been with a couple months, but I'm going to drop it because they're going to do a goblin set, and like, I don't need more goblins in my life. I have so many goblins forever and ever. And if I wanted a specific cool goblin, I'd go looking for it. But like, at this point, I don't need more goblins, and so I'm going to drop that Patreon, and I do that every month. So now I'm like, I feel weird that, like, especially with one that has such an awesome loyalty program, that like, now I'm going to have to split my focus between those two things. It's also interesting because, and I might be wrong on this long term, so I'm not going to say, don't quote me on this or whatever, but like, if it's if the tribes is not going to offer, because right now you get factions and mythology set in their Patreon, so it looks like it's going to be a totally different value statement. But like you said, probably best to just treat it like it's a totally different Patreon or channel thing.
I think the weird ones is when it is the same set, but there's exclusive models or exclusive poses depending on where you got it. That's where things get more interesting in the discussion, because ultimately what they're doing is they're trying, that is the artist telling you this is the one you should be using. And I think in most cases it's better for you to go and shift to the platform that they prefer you to be on by doing this incentive, as long as all other things are equal.
Heroes Infinite, I think, does variant poses, and it goes to their website, so they get way more of the money, obviously.
It takes a little bit more to get me to go to your private website, and because I'm going to forget it's not in with the others, I'm probably not going to discover it. If you're big enough, if you're Heroes Infinite, you get to get away with it, because I'm going to go check out the ridiculous quality models that you made this month. But oh man, that is something else I wanted to shout out to. Is okay, Total War 3 is happening. That means Kislev is in demand, and of course, because it's in demand and because it's popular and because there aren't a whole lot of physical models, everybody is doing Kislev. Titanforged just announced they're doing Kislev. Highland Miniatures been doing Kislev for ages.
For very new listeners, what's Total War and what's Kislev?
Okay, so Total War is a wonderful PC game that made a version based off the old world for Warhammer. So and because Old Hammer is one of the most supported model types in 3D printing, because those models are old, you can't get them anymore, nobody makes them anymore, and they're stupid expensive. There's a built-in demand, and also there doesn't seem to be as many like diehard GW fans rallying against people printing Old Hammer. Because like nobody's wanting to pay like literally $700 for a box of Bretonnians anymore.
Right. I mean, very few.
Yeah, and Kislev is, like Kevin Reed in chat is saying, it's like fantasy Russia. where
Yeah.
they have this
Okay.
Ice Queen that rides dragon. They have Bear Cavalry and
Yeah.
Winged
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Hussars, and
I've
it's
already seen a
awesome.
few of those
Yeah.
then
And
in my
so
channel.
many companies are doing it at this point. And so, like, if you're a Kislev fan, this is your season. There are so many
Right.
great choices available for that.
Gonna
Heroes
be a
Infinite
ton.
set is gorgeous. I love it. And the Titanforged set that they just announced looks great for that too. And I know the Highland set is really nice and going to be well supported. So just basically pick your mini style because you're
Yep.
going to have so much choice.
And yes, Kevin, that Eldar set is wicked cool.
Yeah, I mean,
or alpha elves or whatever they're calling them.
Yeah, I did not grab the Eldar set, and I'm still kicking myself.
Yeah,
but
that's
I
going to
don't
be
play a lot of 40K ish in games. Even though I did some work for OPR on Grimdark Future, I am not doing a whole lot with the 40K style stuff.
By the way, I do actually have another bit of news that I don't know what it's going to mean for us, and I've totally forgot to mention it. PayPal is responding to a lot of international law changes, and there's going to be a lot of artists as of January who will not be able to take PayPal payments.
Huh?
Especially it's hitting Thailand, and I don't know how many 3D modelers are going to be hit by that, but it's going to be something to keep a watch out. It's definitely hurting a couple of the fantasy artist friends I have, and it's something that we're going to have to be aware of. It's already stuff like that with the Matt Station thing with the sites in Russia. I think I mentioned there are a couple of these company sites where unless you are willing to give very unrestricted access to your banking information,
wow,
you are not going to be able to get anything from them. And then, your banking information is elsewhere. Like I even tried prepaid debit cards and stuff, and it just doesn't work. So like,
darn,
lot of trust going to be happening there if you want it. Otherwise, I think there's going to probably have to be some changes or some evolution in the payment options for people. So hopefully something will emerge that makes it more accessible, because I don't want artists. This is one of the things I love about this particular hobby is so much of this gets right to the artist, and that's incredible. That's very unusual.
Right.
And they can make it such a good livelihood. So
I was like chatting with the Titanforged group this weekend. I was like, it's awesome because you all can release you can design a model yesterday, publish it today, and I have it printed and playing with it tomorrow, and you're halfway across the world. And that's just not possible in any other industry.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kevin. It does look like a lot of artists are going to have to start considering crypto, which,
that's a thing.
That's a thing. Feel how you feel about that.
Yeah. I'm curious as to where things will go. Anyway, that's a weird note that I'm not prepared or researched on to discuss.
Let's not make any statements about that.
All right. And I think that is about to bring our episode to a close. If you want to support the podcast, you can give us a good review wherever you saw this. Give us the thumbs up. Give us a subscribe. If you're one thing that really helps us is giving us a 5-star review on iTunes. That would really, really help the podcast and help us spread further. If you want to get more of this content, go to printyourgames.com. We're available on all the platforms, the YouTubes, we're on Google now. It took a while to get on Google, but Google finally approved us. We're on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere good podcasts are found, you will find us there. And until next time, remember, you can be your own game store. You can print your games.